Addendum, the non-hereditary genetic spread details. Restored to the old normal on Earth of a century ago in 2022. This is the stock standard fascinating futuristic sounding document that is usually automatically viewed as the orthogon whacko stuff that could be used to cast fake doubt on the rest thing. It is regarding somnambulist genes in humans, to be more specific. Factoring in the human equivalent species that evolved in a different star system that was hiding in the atmosphere of Saturn for around 900 years until destroyed in late 2022. Their little bit of evil trickery to introduce the false concept of God that can change the natural path of evolution becomes clear. Even if it is the weirdest sounding thing going around. Suspend your reflex pantomime-inspired rejection and take it in as theory. Believe it if you're sensible. As mentioned in the gender, sexuality, and spread details chapter. The genetic spread of natural normal non-hereditary bits, albino, big-statured, short-statured, somnambulist, etc. is counted by gene in each chromosome of 2 in living conceptions. From one cell zygote to oldest person alive in humans. Each living DNA strand in each zygote can have a maximum of 2 counting chromosomes for each category. The total count includes every chromosome in our star system, by species or group category species, the same as every individual star system. The species that arrived from elsewhere in the galaxy around 900 years ago, that was hiding in the atmosphere of Saturn until destroyed in late 2022, was included in the count of those details in our star system as a human equivalent species. Part of the count with us humans automatically when they entered our star system and parked in Saturn. Fairly simple. Ordinarily they would have had the approximate same spread percentages in their living conceptions whilst hiding in Saturn, obviously. But they developed a way to DNA test sperm and ova to detect if the chromosome in each one had a somnambulist gene in it. Then focused on conceiving as many living conceptions with a somnambulist gene as they could, letting them live as long as possible without being gestated. For example, petering out in a nutrient solution medium whilst creating more in a cycle. Always having tens of millions of living somnambulist gene embryos at any one time, for example. They dumped any that didn't get fully gestated and then only gestated double somnambulist embryos to birth, where possible. Constantly gestating and giving birth to only double somnambulist conceptions, where possible. That caused the number of conceptions on Earth with 1 or 2 somnambulist genes in them to drop as they started to do it. Causing an aggravating and annoying anomaly in the number of somnambulist conceptions on Earth, compared to all the other categories. And in humans and microorganisms only, not the animals in between.
They used that to introduce the hideously evil false concept of a god or a magic spell that can change the natural normal path of evolution to try to introduce the idea of a superior species, being, who could control the numbers and make them change.
Then used it to get people to pretend evil experimentation could cause the numbers to change in other categories, too. With possible human extinction and theft of our planet and star system in mind. Possibly. Or just planning to steal everything useful left behind if we came to our extinction demise. All the while treacherously advising people on Earth to victimize and harass somnambulist gene people as if something was wrong with the numbers that had wider implications. So, for somewhere up to 900 years, approximately, it has been incessantly annoying. Think this typical approximate quote from people who incorrectly argued somnambulist was possibly debatable as natural in some way and one of my Romana family coat of arms. A family with limited members for centuries that has consistently had a somnambulist gene person around almost always, if not always. Well, we're not saying that somnambulist is unnatural or not normal or anything for certain because of the animal's numbers being normal. But the number of somnambulists humans on Earth just seems a little lower than the other categories are, like albino and pattern bald. And well, with that being the case in humans, it's just a little weird and makes you think you know, maybe. The worst fake theory on why they were a little lower was that, quote, maybe somnambulist was evolving out of our species and some somnambulist gene humans got left behind to be more like an animal than human because the animals still have it. You know, more like a Neanderthal than people without the somnambulist gene. Of course, people with a natural kinky sexual attraction to somnambulists were the first ones to get seriously angry about it that weren't somnambulist. And I mean seriously angry. The number of somnambulist chromosomes in living conceptions in humans in our star system, the solar system, has gone back to the old normal on Earth, with only humans counting like all the other categories since that species hiding in Saturn was destroyed in self-defense of our star system in 2022. There was a large burst of new somnambulist children born in 2023, back to human-only births in our star system, making the numbers up to the old normal, and it is slightly exciting in some ways. I'm ready to party. So are plenty of others, with that resentful somewhere around the 900 years of vengeful bitterness still there. It will fade, for sure. Back to the old normal like the others. It also caused the weird quote, somnambulist gene people and animals seem to be sort of aware of them in some way, the intruding aliens, via being able to communicate via the common somnambulist gene DNA. I am double somnambulist by the way. There was always the genetic communication connection between double somnambulists and single somnambulists on Earth and their species hiding in Saturn, as they were all double somnambulist. They were claiming to be a superior being to humans, introducing the false concept of evolution changing God with their little bit of genetic trickery. Also traitors to their own double somnambulist genes by telling people to constantly speculate about and victimize somnambulist humans on Earth as if weird, inferior, or obsolete evolutionary leftovers, whilst claiming to be a superior being in our solar system that were all double somnambulist themselves. It's the end of several so-called terrorist fake doctrine and terrorism groups as well. Things like the bizarrely mislabeled heinous concept of ethnic cleansing was the extended heinous intellectual vomit produced and attempted to be passed off as an experiment to see if the numbers in other categories could be manipulated. Like somnambulists just seemed a little lower in humans than others, lunatics trying to cast fake spells via torture and murder to attempt to gain the non-existent power to manipulate the numbers in other categories themselves. Horrible. How did that crap end up with people pretending they could make everyone bisexual? That just leaves minor discrepancies in very small organisms on Earth caused by the equivalent organism living and evolving on Titan, which was moved to our star system and did not form in the solar system, along with Europa and Triton.
They're fine, those microorganisms on Titan. They are not attempting to breed only one category and everything, so they should have the usual spread in themselves with Earth and the rest of our star system factored in. Any discrepancy on Earth caused by them will be temporary and not permanent, constantly morphing with real-time changes.
The percentages of those spread details, with all but the category none of them at all being caused by parahydrogen in the universe, count in the total in our star system, species category by species category. Like amoeba, if applicable. If there are amoeba in Titan, the genetic details count with amoeba on Earth for the total in our star system. That concept is important to reference for the idea of humans and animals becoming multiplanetary in our own star system. They can't harm us in any way. There is microscopic organisms living in Titan for certain. In the cryovolcano warm spots clearly visible in orbital probe data that are caused by the Saturn polar wobble stretch squeeze effect heating. They may cause minuscule anomalies in amoeba genetic detail numbers on Earth, for example, but can't do us any harm. They are amoeba. People who trained themselves to monitor genetic somnambulist spread numbers on Earth, who immediately went for the peering brain at the somnambulist humans when looking for anomalies compared to other categories, don't get that anomaly to count anymore and immediately get diverted to microscopic morphing anomalies in microorganisms instead. The genetic spread details in our star system were actually totally normal the whole time that species was in our star system, until 2022, but their bit of genetic trickery caused the numbers on Earth to seem slightly a little lower in total somnambulists than the other categories. In short, as a bizarre flow-on effect of assuming incorrectly. The lunatics intellectually diverted by the anomaly in total somnambulist genes in humans on Earth, caused by the species from elsewhere in the galaxy that was hiding in Saturn's little bit of trickery until late 2022, led to lunatics on Earth deciding to illegally withhold inheritance assets from as many somnambulist gene beneficiaries as possible. Illegally withhold inheritance estates from beneficiaries who inherited assets via a previous owner who was a somnambulist gene person. Illegally withhold inheritance estates from beneficiaries who inherited off a previous owner who had a somnambulist gene ancestor within a set number of generations. Pretend the situation, as it was the excuse for evil experimentation on other categories, like albino, and somnambulist had to unfairly take the blame. As another example, the Titanic incident may have been an attempt to fill the vessel with as many wealthy somnambulist gene people as possible to then pass on the inheritances after the mass murder to non-somnambulist beneficiaries only. Including stealing the identities of any somnambulist gene beneficiaries after their relatives etc. were booked for the trip. My great-grandfather Prince Sebastian Habsburg, the last Habsburg prince, was naturally a somnambulist gene person. He captained the maiden voyage of the Titanic under the pseudonym Ed Smith. If that is a typical theoretical organized crime-themed example, a Titanic full of wealthy somnambulists, then they were pretending the assets were sort of going to people with a detail that may have been to evolving out of humans, but not animals, that are therefore between a human and an animal. More like, say, a modern Neanderthal in some way, with obsolete or out-of-date genetic details. So, they tried to pass on the assets illegally early to non-somnambulist beneficiaries via a mass murder, or steal them, so they didn't go to a person they were pretending was considered to be possibly between a human and an animal in some way. Somnambulist does not mean subhuman, missing link, more towards an animal than full human, or completely off the chart compared to non-somnambulists and the animals who are somnambulists, as if some weird genetic resonance.
Restore order and hand the inheritance assets over to the owners, like myself, now.
The other thing to factor in is lunatics pretending they personally have had some intergenerational magic powers over somnambulists, whilst there was anomalies in the total human numbers on Earth, whilst the species was hiding and living in Saturn's atmosphere until late 2022. They are lunatics who sit around staring at natural somnambulist gene people, pretending the focus of the staring is about to respond like a puppet when never told to. As if the stare alone, and all the intergenerational theories, made of lies, and their implications, back up to 900 years, is enough to make a somnambulist gene person that puppet for them, just with the persistent stare and residual self-deprecation. They stare, blink, smirk, get violent, and wait. They will take a while to break down to reality, but it will happen. Partying, or vengeful revenge motivated by residual bitterness racked up for over half a millennia, is upon you. It must have been stressful and weird, for everyone, when the species hiding in Saturn settled enough to start conceiving millions of somnambulist gene embryos and only gestating double somnambulist babies to cause the anomaly in the spread details count on Earth to work it for evil from there. The reverse has just happened, starting late 2022. The somnambulist gene spread count in humans is back to humans only. Back to the old normal of around a millennium ago. Party, anyone? As a final note, ritualistically or repeatedly abusing natural somnambulist gene people because the vile evil extrasolar intruders that were hiding in Saturn's atmosphere for around 900 years were all double somnambulist gene human equivalents, pretending to be a superior being to humans was never acceptable. It isn't acceptable now they are gone either, or at any time in the future. End of non-whacko document. Warning, don't send someone to take me away.